Yeah, we're ready to start. Let's do it. Welcome to 7.19 gameplay patch. This is the new Dota 2 patch. As this is a first impressions, just want to clarify that this is the first time I've read any of this, so I'm going to make some mistakes, probably. And if I do, I'm sorry. That's about it. Okay, cool. Let's go over it. Daily bonus hero changed from 2 mangoes to 1. This is complained about a lot in the pro scene. I think this is probably for the best, especially because you can pick these heroes. It's kind of a massive benefit. And at higher MMRs, it kind of like completely breaks the meta a little bit, because if you get a hero that's kind of viable and then you also get 2 mangoes for free, it's super broken, because that's like an extra 140 starting gold. And the way you should look at it is an extra 250 mana. So you can abuse enemy heroes really well. And for like some offlane hero kind of stuff, or some cores, sometimes the regen is really good too, especially strength heroes, because they get a little bit more HP regen from it. So I think this is fine. I still wish randoming was back. I barely randomed since they changed it, and it bothers me a lot, to be honest. I did really enjoy randoming a lot. I don't think it should be in ranked ever, but I think on unranked being able to random would be kind of nice, personally. But who knows, maybe it caused too much toxicity. Added 2 trees near the cliff area below the dire primary jungle shrine. So I'm guessing what this will partially do. The cliff area below the dire... Oh, sorry, I'm thinking the other one. Primary jungle shrine. So that's the dire side of the map, their jungle. That's in between... The shrine that's in between the medium camp and the large camp. There should be another one over there by the cliff area. So it's probably harder to see into the Roche area with wards there, I would guess. I imagine it has to do with warding that they changed this, if I had to guess. Okay, onto the heroes. Abaddon's Mistcoil mana cost has been reduced to 50 at all levels. This is actually a pretty huge change, I dare say, especially for a support potential Abaddon. Core Abaddon is pretty much exclusively the way that Abaddon is played. I think, who was it? OG played support Abaddon in one game. It was No-Tail playing it. It was a really good game for it. It was like a very random draft, and that was a regional qualifier. So it was like a rare situation that ended up being effective. I would play with them, but gotta do the patch. But 50 mana for all of these is pretty solid. It may end up producing a bit of a situation where Abaddon kind of just goes to lane and spams Mistcoil again. And there was a period of time where that was kind of popular, but not so much anymore. The negative is that it's actually costs you a lot of health, and you're barely doing harass advantage against your opponents. But Abaddon as a hero has really weak armor, but he does have pretty high HP, and he's got decent strength. So I don't know, maybe there's a situation where spamming Mistcoil could become very useful. I could certainly see something where you go like... I mean, a lot of people will get Curse of Avernus for the harass potential and the chase and stuff, but maybe something like Aphotic Shield level 1, Mistcoil level 2, or the reverse, maybe max Mistcoil first, or get Mistcoil level 1. That's probably not worth it, but... I don't know, maybe there's some situations where maxing this out first could be really worthwhile. It's a really good nuke on a low cooldown. So hypothetically, if you have a regen advantage in your lane, you spam Mistcoil on somebody, that's pretty strong. You could also do the same if you're a support. If you get Tranquil Boots really fast and you have a little bit of mana regen, you can actually just sit in lane and spam this on people. So I don't know, maybe some support Abaddon is semi-viable. He's a really fast hero too, 310. Just he has really low armor, he's got good attack, pretty good base stats. You can cast 6 of these Mistcoils, so I could certainly see some moments where spamming Mistcoils as a support could be worthwhile, and maybe put mangoes on top of that or something. Support Abaddon with Mistcoil spam, perhaps. Not sure. Alright, Ancient Apparition Ice Vortex mana cost is reduced. This is a pretty nice buff. I played AA a few times in the last couple weeks, and I would say... Okay, audio's working, we're good. Lower mana at level 1 is nice, just because I usually only get about 1 point of Vortex early, like pre-6, just because the scaling is better. And the fact that it's this much less on mana cost also makes them more appealing. But this is a really good skill to actually max out at a reasonable pace. Lately I've been getting kind of disillusioned with Chilling Touch, because it's like, it's so weak at level 1, is what, it's not, it's kind of weak. It's kind of weak at level 1, especially in dual lanes. It doesn't feel very good to me. It feels like you need like 2 points for the skill to be good. So I'm not a big fan of Chilling Touch right now. Cold Feet just seems a lot better, I guess. The cooldown's like really low. Cast range is good. The damage is not bad. It does like, what, 120 damage, I think, level 1. So I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Chilling Touch right now. So maybe more points of Ice Vortex would make more sense, but it just kind of depends on the lane, I guess. But more Ice Vortex is really good just by the time you get Ice Blast, and if you get Spell Amp, for example, all of those things become really effective. So I think this is nice. It'll definitely make A little bit better in lane, I guess. You'll be less out of mana as fast, I guess, because you will use Ice Vortexes in the laning stage. So if you're doing like a Cold Feet Vortex, you're saving 15 mana each time. So maybe it could be really worth it. And certainly makes casting multiple Ice Vortexes in the early mid-game a lot easier to do. And even like as it scales up a little bit, basically the first 2 levels of Vortex, you'll save a decent amount of mana. So in late game, it's all the same. Bloodseeker already nerfed, and this looks pretty significant to me. So Thirst is rescaled, so you're getting much less bonus, although the movement speed looks exactly the same. So the movement speed bonus is exactly the same. He's still going to be fast, and the threshold is the same, but his damage is just significantly lower. 7, at least early game. So if you're like a level 3 Bloodseeker, if you have 1 point in each of your 3 skills, he's not going to get this massive damage advantage, which means that it's probably going to be harder for him to outlast hit you and things like that. How does this work exactly numbers-wise? So max thirst damage per hero probably is, it was 16 per hero. So if 5 enemy heroes were below 25% health, he would get 16 plus times 5 damage. Now it is 7 times 5. So if you have 1 hero below 25%, you only get 7 damage per hero. Whereas before it'd be 16, which is pretty huge if you think about it. Because if there's like 2 enemy heroes that are, I don't know, even like at half HP, if there are 50%, 2 heroes at 50% HP, you'd get 8 damage per hero, which is a 16 damage bonus, and that's like level 1, level 2, depending on when you scale. You'll probably scale it 2, but so it'll just make Bloodseeker much weaker at laning. He won't just get all this advantage from enemy heroes fighting a lot. So I think this is probably neat. Bloodseeker was pretty popular. There's some games where he was really good at the Adrenaline. Is that what it was called? Adrenaline in Toronto that we went to, where OG played Immortals. They weren't super tryharding, but they were picking meta heroes, and some of the games Bloodseeker looked kind of mediocre, and some games he looked really strong. So I think this is probably for the best, because teams do seem like they have to ban it first phase or deal with it later. So talent-wise, a little bit reduction in max thirst, movement speed, and damage by 2% reduction to make him a little bit worse late game, I guess. So that would have put him up to 60% movement speed per hero and 60 damage per hero, but now it's going to be only 18. So very small nerf at ultra late game Bloodseeker, I guess. Broodmother getting nerfs too. This hero has been pretty popular lately. He has a really high win rate at the moment. So movement speed is heavily reduced to level 1, 25% instead of 40, and the replenish rate is just slightly nerfed. So this just makes Broodmother and Bloodseeker, basically, who are strong lane heroes, just a little bit worse. I would say for Brood, I'd say both are like moderately worse at level 1 for the skill points. It's a pretty big difference. I think Brood's actually pretty slow. 270 movement speed. So before he was getting 40, so that's like 27 times 4. We can round it to 30 basically, and then so it's like 120 movement speed minus 12 or something like that. So it's like 110 movement speed before at level 1, and now it's much less. 25% of that. It's like 270 divided by 4, which is like 70 or something. Am I right on that? Yeah, about that. Like 65 to 70. Decline. 65 to 70 movement speed, I think. So pretty significantly less, like 30 or 40 less. So maybe dual laning Brood will be a little easier this way, because at least then you can contest his last hits more. If he gets out of position, you can right click him more. He'll still be the same late game, but his laning movement speed won't be as abusively strong. Okay, Centaur Warrunner getting a pretty decent buff. Base strength increased by 2. That's actually huge. So now he's got 27 base strength and 807 HP at level 1, which is massive. That also increases his damage by 2. It didn't say that it reduces right-click damage, so his base damage is even higher. It's hitting for an average of 64. He's not slow. He's just like average. And yeah, he's very, very high HP. But it is Centaur, I guess. One dual lane that I was kind of theory crafting was something like Centaur plus Lich or something. Just like throw an ice armor on the guy and just let him tank everything. Thought that would kind of be fun. I don't know if that's viable or good, but something like that sounded kind of enjoyable to me. Probably not ideal. Crystal Nova getting a nerf. This is basically to be expected, right? Nova got buffed in a big way. It went from 100 damage to 130 at level 1, which is a little bit too strong. And now what they did is they increased the mana cost by a lot. So basically 30 more mana at level 1. So it is not nearly as efficient at level 1 to spam it. It's you're getting 1 damage per mana now, per hero that you're casting on, whereas before you were getting 1.3 damage per mana. Doubled was 2.6. Frostbite was around 1.1 damage per mana. So this brings Nova much more in line with with a lot of other skills, and this should balance the hero a lot better. The bright side is that it still does 130 damage, which is not uncommon. It's like when Ice Frog buffs and changes heroes, what he doesn't normally do is, like, let's say he basically overbuffed Crystal Nova. That's clear, right? Especially because we have a nerf here. Crystal Nova gets overbuffed, and then as a result, he's not going to then say, well, let's take that buff back, reduce the damage by 10 or something. Because that's kind of like a lame way to do it. It's more enjoyable kind of to the game if you just put a nerf on it that's in a different way. So then the hero's strengths are still there. It's like, but you don't have to like remove the fun things about the hero that was just discovered. It's just it's a lot harder to spam it now. So now she can only cast 2 of those, about 2 of those Novas before needing Arcane Aura or Mangoes or things like that. So this is going to definitely put a dent in her win rate, considering that she could pretty much cast 3 by the time your 3rd one gets off. So harder to harass, but again, this is still just like a level 1 change, which is basically what makes heroes strong, what makes heroes very strong right now. Almost all of these changes are literally just like, is the hero strong enough at level 1, level 2? Because that is so much of the game right now. It is so much about trading and things like that. So it's not surprising at all to see all of these changes, especially because they're pretty small, right? Like pretty much all of these, with the exception of like Abaddon's Mistcoil here, they're all either buffs or nerfs to like level 1, level 2 in the game, and then from there on they're about the same. So I think that's the appropriate way to change the game at the moment, because TI is very soon. It's only about 2 weeks away. So I'm not too surprised to see everything be kind of small. Somebody told me the patch was a little bit small, but I'm not surprised to see smaller things. I think out of all the nerfs so far, I guess these 3 are pretty significant, I guess, at level 1. But the CM one's kind of maybe not the biggest deal, but it's definitely a pretty big mana increase. I mean, 30% more mana. She did just get 30% more damage to Crystal Nova, so this brings it more in line. Anyways, Drow Ranger base strength reduced by 1, so that's like 18 less HP at level 1. Now she's at 506, so definitely even easier to kill. Drow has been picked a little bit just for like range damage strats, basically, because she does make you trade better in the laning stage, even though she's kind of a weak laner herself. But she was played pretty successfully. I think, did OG play her 1 game? I think it was OG played her 1 game, and I don't think Immortals did, if I'm not mistaken. If I look at Dota Buff, it looks like she was banned a little bit, kind of here and there. Banned and picked a little bit. Looks like EG played her. Don't know if too many other teams tried her out, but I'm not seeing that many Drow picks, but it looks like EG picked her a few times, and she's definitely got a decent amount of first-round bans against certain teams, so not too surprised. But Drow Ranger still was, kind of the same hero, very good at pushing with your team, and not necessarily the best carry herself, but can if she has a good game. Enchantress kind of got popular all of a sudden because of Nature's Attendance getting buffed. What was the previous one? Yeah, the cooldown got reduced by 10, and essentially it was a free salve every 10 seconds, or every 35 seconds. You get 400 HP of heal, usually to your hero, and you'd use that basically to just out-trade your opponents. Like it'd be things like Crystal Maiden or other heroes that are supposed to out-nuke you. Well, she would just trade hits and then out-heal the nukes that you deal. But now they're massively increasing the mana cost, actually. 170 for level 1 is pretty huge, but it's pretty fair, I think. I mean, Enchantress still has really good mana pool at level 1. It's not like she's spending it on anything else. You got Enchant for 65 mana, and then you have Nature's Attendance. So boom, it's like, is this really going to hurt the hero? Probably not that much, because if you're using anything like a bottle or a mango or something, you're going to have the mana for it. And as you skill it up, it does become less mana expensive. Now, I think the most significant thing about this, in my opinion, is that I guess it did scale up before, but not very fast. And in fact, it scaled up kind of weirdly. I didn't notice that before. This could be pretty impactful if Enchantresses go light on Nature's Attendance and they try to go for kills, because when you do throw a lot of impetuses, you can very easily run out of mana sometimes. So I think there's going to be some cases where you see Enchantresses run out of mana to use Nature's Attendance. A wand is probably already Corn Enchantress, but maybe even more important now. So Little nerf to Enchantress, not the most significant thing because she doesn't have that much mana to spend, but over the course of a longer laning stage, she will run out of mana, and that may be one way to punish her, is force her to trade. She casts this twice, maybe 3 times, she's out of mana, doesn't really have the time to use clarities, but if you just buy mangoes on her, like 1 or 2, this is going to be completely fine. This is not that significant of a nerf to the hero, although maybe she now has to buy mangoes, says something else, you know? Juggernaut. It's not been super popular. It's getting a Blade Fury damage increase at level 1. One of the reasons that Jug isn't very good right now is in the past, as a carry, he was great in a tri-lane as a carry because you do a stupid amount of damage at level 1. And most carries don't do that. They take like some time to ramp up. They don't impact as much. But if you have a tri-lane versus single off-lane, the supports just need to have enough disable to guarantee that Jug can get a Blade Fury spin off and all of a sudden he deals. Well, he used to deal 80 times 5 damage, which is like 400 magic damage for 1 skill point. That's incredible. But the problem now is that if it's dual lanes, and you go spin on a guy, okay, you did a bunch of damage, but are you going to be able to kill him, or are you going to chase him down, or are they going to kill your support while you chase one guy down and then maybe he lives? It's all kind of iffy, and the cooldown is really long, 42 seconds. He doesn't have that much mana early on. You can cast about 2 Blade Furies, so it's like he's potentially a good hero, but in a dual lane situation, he doesn't trade very well, and he doesn't even have good base damage. I don't think it's like very mediocre. His movement speed's okay, his armor's good, his health is a little low, but it's like he needs Blade Dance points, he needs like an Aqua in a phase before he starts getting a little scary. So in a dual lane situation, Jug is not the best hero. So just a small buff there to make him a little bit better at the laning stage. Necrophos has also been picked a lot recently, probably because of his ability to trade hits with Death Pulse and control a lane and basically become completely independent in those lanes. Reaper's Scythe cooldown has been nerfed cooldown wise. Did it really become... No. What is this? I think this is a mistype. This is Aghanim's Reaper Scythe cooldown. When you get Ags, the cooldown is that low. But if you don't have Ags, then the cooldown is 120 seconds. So it used to go all the way down to 25 seconds. It adds a respawn time of up to 45, which is a lot. So people would just kind of go like Necrophos eventually, just kind of, you know, they buy the right items. So whether they need a hood or a Blink Dagger. I think one game we saw an Atos Necro into BKB that worked out pretty nicely. They had a Pudge on their team too, so you could set up Atos hooks for his Pudge. Didn't see Ags that game, but I've seen some pubs where pros will go Ags and just kind of like blink around ganking and getting Reaper Scythe kills. Once you have the Ags, the cooldown is so low that it kind of gives you a big advantage like it did back in the day. But it's also that Necro just kind of got back in the meta again. It's like you could always do that, but Necro wasn't strong enough in the meta to feel like it was worth it. So I think he's gotten quite a few buffs recently to things like Death Pulse and the regen amounts, so maybe that helped as well. But dual lanes are certainly a little different. And they also increased the cast pump just a tiny bit, 0.55, so a little bit easier to interrupt and disable him before he gets that off. Ghost Shroud self-magic resistance reduction increased. Ooh. That is really, really dangerous. 40% is insane, actually, how much that is. Self-magic resistance reduction. 40% is incredible. That is like, I am scared to use this thing. I mean, it does stop physical damage and all, but like 40% is crazy. If they have spells, man, I am down for him to use Ghost Shroud, that's for sure. Even something like a Juggernaut Blade Fury would do insane damage to this. If he uses that and they have spells, man, that's a bad time. Ogre Magi is getting a very small buff. It's not bad. 5 damage at all levels, Fire Blast increase, so by the time you max it out, it's pretty significant. 240 is not bad. Now, the important thing to remember on Ogre Magi is that once you get multicast now, it scales a lot easier. It's more clear. Is this a tooltip bug? Do you guys see what I'm looking at? I can't point with my finger because my head's in the way. Okay, so right here, it says 60%, and then it says 0, 30, 30, and then it says 0, 0, 15. I don't know, I'm confused. Does that mean that I'm very confused. Regardless, I like Maximum Fire Blast second when I play Ogre Magi. Bloodlust is really good too, so maybe a mix of both. Maybe like leave Ignite at 3 perhaps, but if you get Fire Blast maxed out and you can go around multicasting people, it's actually pretty good damage. So if you want to do the math, you can do 60% for 2 times. So before it did 220, we'll do the math really quick, and then I'll go times 1.6. So this is like your average Fire Blast damage per cast once you have your ulti, and it does 352 damage basically for a chance to multicast, you could argue, on average. And then 240 times 1.6 is 384. So it's like a 30 damage increase, which is pretty huge with the multicast. That makes sense, right? Because it increased it by 20, and then if we multiply 20 by 1.6, it's going to be somewhere around that 130. It's like 34 extra damage. But if it does multicast now, we're doing 480 damage instead of 440. It's not bad. Obviously, that gets better with every multicast. So yeah, little buff to Fire Blast. I think that's nice. I don't think it's going to matter a huge amount, but an Ogre can lane pretty okay. It's just he's not as good as other heroes, and he doesn't have AoE either, and he's pretty slow, so he kind of has this conundrum of like, he wants Orb of Venom, but he also would love a Stout Shield, but he also wants movement speed, so, oh well. Outward Devourer has pretty low win rate right now, I think. Sanity's Eclipse damage multiplier increased. I think this makes sense. It's an ulti that can be good, but is like, it's either like amazing if you're super stomping, otherwise it's like you get one kill with it. I feel like you never really use it on a whole team very often. It's better for that than it used to be because it does remove their mana no matter what, and that can be useful sometimes. Like there's been certainly team fights where I play against an OD and lose mana and feel like I have to disengage, but the damage multiplier was not always the best, and a +1 multiplier here is not bad. He's also got a talent at 20, I believe. Yeah, the 21, the +2 sanity is Eclipse multiplier, so that means you can pump it all the way up to 13 now. So if you have, for every extra int you have more than your opponent, pump that up a little bit. Oh, I never get denies apparently. That is because I'm not as good at laning and I don't use Astral Imprisonment correctly. You're supposed to banish and then deny creeps. I am bad. Looks like his win rate's okay at Divine, at least recently, but... And scroll down again. Oop, too far. Essence or mana bonus increase. So this is the mana that your hero gets from this, and it looks like it gives an extra 25 per level. So you get a little bit more level, a little bit more mana to your hero just from Essence Aura right now. So I would argue makes the numbers look pretty, number one, and slightly more damage late game, because if you're throwing out orbs and you have max mana, that you're dealing like an extra 9 pure damage, which is pretty good. So this is, you could look at this as like an orb buff, orb damage buff, and just generally just a nice little increase, unless you're playing against anti-mage, and it sucks. Phantom Lancer base int reduced by 2, and Juxtapose Illusion incoming damage increased. Okay, so this is an interesting way to change the hero. Reducing his int by 2, he's got a decent int gain, but I mean that's like, how much less mana is that? I can't remember how much int you get as an edgy hero. That's like one thing I wish I could see a little bit more. I mean, I could just demo it, I guess. Pick up an Iron Root branch, see what the increase is. Sometimes I forget these numbers these days. 303. Okay, it is 12. So that means I think for interiors it's 15 is what it is. Okay, just want to double check. So he loses a total of, well, it's not just the mana. So he's got 24 less mana, but he's also going to have less spell, less mana increase too. So he's got 34.2 mana regen right now. So it's not just the int. I think the spell amp is kind of irrelevant, but you know, 24 less int, and it's like 4% less mana regen, 3% less mana regen. It's small, but that is over the course of the whole game. So if you're just running around with like an Aquila and maybe like a Diffusal Blade and a Treads, and you're tread switching, like you will run out of mana a little bit faster on the hero. So I don't know if it's a big deal, but it's kind of an okay way to nerf the hero. I just don't, it's not going to matter probably that much. The one that will matter is the Juxtapose Illusion incoming damage is increased, so your illusions are going to die even faster than before. So if you do have AoE, that's a big increase. You're dealing 20% more damage to them now at all stages, so it should be a lot easier to clear the Juxtapose. And I think this is probably kind of needed because Peel's in this place right now. I mean, he's always kind of been in this place where if it's kind of like Brood, if they don't have AoE, then he becomes a huge issue. And things like Mjolnir don't usually scale well enough against PL with building heart and stuff. It doesn't scale well enough to be able to clear the illusions, so you just kind of encounter these issues where you're like, well, they've got PL and it doesn't work out. So in the past, you'd deal with the solution by buying Cleave, like Battle Fury, or you'd get a hero that does have Cleave and buy Battle Fury, or doesn't have cleave but can buy battle for you, or you pick a Sven and then you're just really good against PL. But the problem is that those heroes don't work out in the meta right now because they don't lane super well usually, because it takes a while to get a battle fairy, and then by the time you do get a battle fairy, PL's already been kind of wrecking your whole team. And PL lane's a lot safer than those carries. He's hard to kill, he can become lane independent, and he also has the benefit of being the whole like AoE illusion thing, so it's if the matchups are okay, it's hard to play against them. So as a carry, it's just hard to deal with him, so people just ban him because otherwise they would pick him almost every game. So the fact that now with any AoE, you're going to have a slightly better chance to be able to easily deal with the illusions is going to be very helpful. One thing I'm curious about is, are the damages different? Okay, so interestingly, one of the doppelganger illusions that's always taken, I don't know if this is just based on juxtapose or not, or if doppelganger has always had its separate numbers, but the doppelganger illusion that does deal damage does 20%, which is actually okay. It's just slightly better than juxtapose. It before was taking slightly more damage than this, but now they're equal. So I thought maybe you'd be able to tell the difference between them. But basically, if you nuke him, and what's a Manta do? Manta illusions are 350% damage on melee. So if he doesn't have a Manta style, you should be able to figure out which hero is the right hero with one nuke. That becomes easier. So I don't know. I don't think this is going to make that big of a difference, but we'll have to see. This is the one that could really matter. The base int one is pretty small, pretty darn small. I mean, he'll have like a little bit less mana for Spirit Lance and all, but the juxtapose one could matter in some cases where they're kind of close to having enough AoE, or they're working with whatever AoE they have. I mean, you're just going to kill illusions faster, period. So, well, we'll see how it works out. Phoenix getting a nerf here. Phoenix kind of finally became really strong. Phoenix's late game has always been good, but his laning stage is always rough. Partially because he's slow, he dealt weird damage, he had shitty armor, aka literally negative armor, and his health was alright, but that was about it. Level 1, he used to be terrible. Fire Spirits used to do, I believe, 10 damage per second. Now they're at 20 at level 1. So they do double the damage they used to. And it also reduces attack speed, which is actually pretty nice. I think part of this value maybe is that trading hits in some of these fights, attack speed reduction is really OP. Because if you're fighting somebody in the jungle and you land a fire split, you're doing 80 damage, which is pretty much a regular nuke, more or less. A little bit low, maybe, compared to some of the strong ones. You're doing a regular nuke, and you're lowering attack speed, which means your further right clicks are just going to be better against them. So in these duel lanes where it's all about getting last hits, where your attack speed's slow, or trading hits to out-regen your opponent, lowering their attack speed can be really good. So between, like, dive is still the same old skill it's always been, and fire spirits is still really long cooldown, but if you get out of the danger zone for Phoenix and just get to like level 10 with the GPM talent, then it's kind of just free sailing. And then later you get the fire spirits damage, you just do a stupid amount of damage with fire spirits, you can farm creeps, push waves, team fight, all that good stuff. And then you just end up buying like Shivas and a couple other items, and it just becomes kind of hard for your opponents to team fight into you. There's a lot of attack to kill things right now, like supernovas, tombstones, nether wards, things like that. And I think there was one game, I think this was OG Immortals game 1, I believe, where OG went like Phoenix plus Undying. And it was like every time there's a team fight, Phoenix uses ulti, Tombstone goes down, and their opponents just couldn't fight into it. They had a Bloodseeker, I believe. So if they have Bloodseeker, they would just grab these like team fight things that would just say like, you guys actually just can't fight us for a minimum like 10 seconds. They'd have to run away. Sometimes they'd get kills before they were able to escape, and then if they stick around and fight, then they have to kill a supernova and kill a tomb, which is really hard to do both. So, and then if you get really late game, you'll buy an eggs, maybe get the supernova hit count if you get to 25. Like all those things are just like hard to deal with. So I think a little nerf to Phoenix in the mid game is, I think, super reasonable. Like he's not strong in the laning stage. It's more like he's passable in the laning stage, sometimes good. And then you get to like mid game and he's like pretty damn strong. Super good team fighter, pretty good at ganking, high damage, can heal. It's like multi-faceted strong hero. So I think this is a good way to nerf the hero. He was picked a little bit, it looks like. I don't know if he was banned too much of the summit. I do see a first round ban by VGJ Storm. It looks like they first round banned in both games against EG. But it's not consistent across the board. The teams are a little bit inconsistent whether they play it or not. Ping Gaming played it. So a little bit of mix of both. Puck getting another buff to Waning Rift. Is this 2 in a row? It is. So it got buffed from 0.75 silence to 1.5. Now it's a 2-second silence at level 1. So makes the hero better in the early game. It's a strong nuke. 100 damage, 2 seconds of silence for 1 skill point. It's not an amazing amount of silence, but it's okay. So early team fight stuff, yeah, I can see this being good. I don't necessarily think Puck can... I don't think he makes his a support, really. He's got decent range, his projectile's fine, his damage is good, I would say. His armor's low, his HP's low. But his nukes are... I mean, Illusory Orb definitely sucks. Level 170 damage is pretty terrible, but 100 damage when you rift, 16-second cooldown. The silence is just, like, inadequate in a lot of cases, is the problem. I don't know, maybe this will make people more likely to pick Puck in the mid lane, but it just feels like less likely. He is a decent lane control hero, but it's more like you just like nuke and push and then you go around ganking kind of. And I don't think that really fits the meta super well. It's more about like super winning your lane, and Puck can do that against some heroes, but not everyone. So I'm not sure about this being the way. Pudge getting a big ol' nerf here on Meathook. So if you guys haven't been following Pudge for a while, for literally the better part of all of Dota 2, Pudge was not a viable hero in the pro scene. He was played at TI1 to great success and excitement, and he was obviously used for fountain hooking with Chen Senbak at TI3. That was a big moment for Pudge. But Pudge has never really been like an in-the-meta consistent pick for a long time. He's had more of that success in the last year or two with some of his various changes. But the problem with Pudge in dual lanes originally was that Pudge gets rot level 1 because it's such a good chase, and in a tri lane that's really good because you can just rot. You're trading your health for their health, but it's fine because it's a tri lane. You're 3v1, you losing a little health to slow them by 30% is great. So they start changing rot a little bit, and now it does a really weak slow at level 1 because it was a little bit too good sometimes. I don't, was that really why they changed it? I don't remember. But they reduced the move slow pretty heavily. Maybe he was seen as too strong. And then all of a sudden it just kind of like was really bad because then the movement speed slow was 11%. So then it was like they over nerfed him. It kind of felt like that. I want to look up his previous nerfs because his patch trajectory has been really weird to me. Just want to make sure. I want to check up like some of the slightly older ones because I don't want to. So let's see. So the Meathook damage got increased in 7.16. That was a while ago. They made the range consistent at all levels. Now it's been played a lot. So they reduced his base armor. They moved rot movement speed from, instead of 30%, they put it down to 20. Made hook mana costs go up. There was like a period of time where he was pretty decent. It's like after they changed regen, I guess 7.07, he got kind of powerful there, I guess. Sort of remember that. So they reduced the slow at level 1 to 20, then they lowered it down to 17. Then they lowered his armor again, lowered his movement speed a little bit. Then they increased his base damage, because now all of a sudden it was like he just wasn't very good. And then they nerfed his movement speed, or his rot damage slow again, down to 11. So it's now 11% level 1. So it's like rot just did not slow adequately at all. You're dealing equal damage to yourself and them, but now you right click a little bit better. But it kind of, I don't know, maybe it was just too good. I don't know, the Pudge buffs and nerfs felt a little bit chaotic to me, I guess, because he wasn't that popular in the pro scene, but I do understand that he's literally the most played hero in the world. I think he's always been top 2, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, so they increased his hook damage to do 150, and then people realized, like, oh shit, I should probably just get Meathook at level 1 and hook people to do a bunch of damage for trading. Because if you use rot, then you're trading regen equally, and he's got bad armor anyway, so if somebody just fights you, Pudge will die first, usually, almost always. But now with hook, it's more equal, but now they super nerf the cooldown at level 1. The skill bloods that I've been seeing actually on Pudge have been 144. They'll go 141, and then they'll usually max out their passive first. Just because the cooldown wasn't like that big of a difference, and the hook damage wasn't that different. It would go from, what, 150 to 360. It's a nice increase, but it wasn't the most prohibitive thing ever. But now it's going to be 5 seconds cooldown per Meathook point. When I played Pudge, I didn't play him often. I would maybe get like 1 flesh heap early, but I would usually max Meathook out first. Just because I wanted lower cooldown and more damage, but it seems that I was in the wrong there compared to what the pro players think. Because they get an extra 6% magic resistance and they get a bunch of strength bonus. I don't know. That's what they did pretty consistently. So now that's the build that I was going is probably going to be more right, because this is an extra 10 seconds at level 1, so you're not going to be able to hook very often. In some ways, you could look at this as a mana buff to Pudge, because now you cannot waste your mana as often. Less hooks to miss, I guess. Got to land your hooks when you throw them. But that is a really long cooldown. 27 is actually so long. So, a little tough for Pudge. Can't quite do hooking stuff as often, but you can still do rot things. So, I think bad Pudges are going to be really hurt by this, and Pudges that are more dynamic in how they move around in dual lanes are still going to be fine, because you don't always have to hook. You can walk from behind, do a little bit of a rot chase kind of a thing, at least by the time you hit 2 or 3, so should be fine. Pugna, still popular, base damage reduced by 2, so a little bit harder for him to harass. He's really fast hero, 335 is insane. It's like one of the fastest two-legged heroes. His base damage is pretty weak, but I mean his damage output is still really good. Another blast 5-second cooldown for 100 damage. I wonder why it says blast damage instead of just damage. I guess it does say flavor drain per second instead of damage per second or something. Yeah. But between his super high movement speed, his relatively good HP, his decent armor, and his okay damage, not amazing, but okay. And plus he gets so much int per level. He's got so much mana. I think reducing his damage by a little bit is worthwhile. He doesn't always do 1v1s. Sometimes he is like this 2v2 hero. Works fine there too, but I think this is probably more than fine. Smokescreen cast point improved by a little bit, so a very small buff to Ricky. I don't think this matters. Ricky kind of got, like, he got that nice Tricks of the Trade buff to his ulti so that he attacked faster and it targeted heroes or whatever, but like it's just they nerfed it, they increased the attack rate, and it kind of killed the hero, because that was like the only good thing about the hero, to be honest. But with Smokescreen having a lower cast point, that means that you can cast Smokescreen, and let's check the backswing animation. Cast point is the moment that the spell exits your hero. So if it takes me 1 second to wave my arms around, and then the spell comes out, and then I finish waving my arms around as I finish casting my spell, my animation, then the cast point would be that 1 second time. So I didn't explain that super well, but so to test this, what I want to do is I'm going to walk here, I'm going to shift Q this, and I'm going to move on. So it's actually pretty fast. He does not have a big backswing at all, which is kind of a nice buff, probably to weaker players generally. That looks like a Phoenix. Because as soon as it goes down, he starts moving again. So this is pretty nice. So if a player is weaker at the game, it's going to be easier for them to cast Smokescreen and instantly cast like Tricks of the Trade or start attacking. They won't make as many mistakes there. This is what decreases vision, I believe. Right? I'm pretty sure it does. It doesn't say that. But I'm pretty sure it does decrease vision on your hero. I don't know why it doesn't show that. Am I crazy? Obviously Spectre does it too right now, but anyways, they did change this a little bit. Oh yeah, that's right, they made the AoE just bigger. This is actually a huge AoE. That was the most recent buff. AoE became huge. They made the cooldown much longer at level 1 though. So it's like, it's better when you do use it, but you won't be able to cast it twice in a row as much often, which I think is a great compromise. Make it much better as a 1-point skill. Although the movement speed slow is really pretty shit at the early levels, but there was a lot of Rickies that would go 4-1-1-1 around ones that like Boston Major, like Ricky and Bounty Hunters. It was kind of fun to watch, but yeah, Ricky's not in a great place right now. His damage is pretty lackluster, but I think that's a nice little change that could make a little difference, make his roaming a little bit better, make him slightly more comparable to a hero like Bounty Hunter. Shadow Shaman base armor increase by 1. That's actually a pretty big buff, I must say. Shadow Shaman has really good base HP. 614 for an int hero, and extra armor is about 5% extra health against physical. That means any damage he takes is going to be resisted, and then any regen he gets after that means that his tankiness is going to be better. I could definitely see myself, honestly, grabbing this hero, going into a pub game, and then what I'm going to do is double check that nobody else is going to buy Urn, and then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to fight heroes, because I'm going to have 5.6 armor. My hero is very slow, 287, but I hit for 76 damage on average, and I have a physical resistance of 21%. And then when I trade hits, I'm just going to slowly regen up on whatever damage I take, which should end up result in me going farther. So if I'm hitting like my hero versus their hero, this is a really nice way to probably make yourself comparable to a typical melee hero in terms of trading. I've been liking this Ring of Protection early purchase lately. in the right matchups if I can abuse like an armor advantage, and then just turning it into a an urn later. Just because it makes any regen that I have go farther. Basically, it makes all the regen that I get 10% better, arguably. And then sometimes having like something like this, I really like as a starting item build on supports right now. The extra Ironwood branches gives me an extra 1% regen. So any regen I get is 1% better. It's not a lot. It's like, what, every tango I use, it's like an extra 1 health or something, 2 health. It's not great, but over the course of a long laning stage, it can really add up, especially with like trickle stuff. Just slightly beneficial. So something like this, lots more HP, a little bit of stats across the board, a ring of protection, regen. I just trade hits all the time. Spam some Aftershock. This feels good. But Shadow Shaman has not been touched really. Part of the problem is that his skills are kind of weak at level 1 right now. I guess the Hex mana cost is low, but this only does 60. This is a long cooldown of 14. It takes you to get to level 13 until you've got an Aftershock that even hits 2 heroes. So Shadow Shaman's not the best dual lane support right now, but I could definitely see him become useful just because his damage is so stupid high and his armor is okay. One team that plays this a lot is usually Fnatic, I believe. DJ would play a lot of Shadow Shaman. Maybe they'll do it some more, perhaps. Sniper, Shrapnel DPS, pretty buffed here. An extra 10, so 35 bonus damage. I think it does, what, 70 damage? 75 damage at level 4, so that would put it up to 110. Yeah, 75 to 80 plus 30. 110 damage per second, not counting spell amp and stuff. That's pretty high. It's hard to get that talent. When I do like, if I get like a Veil on Sniper and go like the cooldown reduction with Veil, I think that talent is pretty good. It's really good now, I would argue. But 40 attack speed is really hard to pass up. 40 attack speed on this hero with Headshot is just so good. But 35 shrapnel DPS is kind of crazy. That's a lot of damage. Very good for clearing creeps. I could see this become extremely good against like PLs and stuff, to be honest. The PLs maybe a case where shrapnel damage could be worth it. But most often Sniper would want to just sit back with Maelstrom anyways and attack faster. But I think it's a cool change. I think there's definitely some area to be explored with Sniper with some magic damage build. Maybe something will be viable, but probably not. Sven base damage increased by 2. Sven's laning is pretty weak generally. A little slow, high HP, good armor. Really good damage, even better now. He's got good stacking, but has really poor mana pool. Stormhammer's not that expensive though, it's 110. I could see Sven be played a little bit more, but his low movement speed is just such a problem, honestly. Like, you have to use Warcry just to be fast at all. It lasts for 8 seconds, but it's like you just can't do it all the time. It just, I don't know, the hero just feels very choreographed, and you don't really have any good like regen solutions right after you start laning, so it's like he just kind of has some issues lane wise. He's easy to gank compared to a lot of heroes. He can be kited later. He's kind of like Wraith King, except a little bit worse right now is what it seems like. Wraith King has been a little bit popular, not across the board, but popular. So I'm not sold on Sven right now. TA Psionic Traps. This actually really needed to happen. TA is pretty good right now, just because she lanes well. She can scale decently as a core. And with Psionic Traps, you can split push really well. At 15, you get the Psionic Trap damage, which means that you get level 2 Psionic Traps that used to do 350. So you would do 550 AoE damage with a Psionic Trap, which I believe would one-shot a creep wave by the time you hit 15. But now that does 50 less, it's not quite the same. I think you're not going to be able to one-shot a creep wave now, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of pretty significant, I think. So it's going to be less, she's going to be less able to affect the map in a really easy way. If you just like hang out in an area jungling, you just slap down like 4 traps maybe in that lane, and then that'll cover you for like 2 minutes of creep wave pushing if your opponents don't deward the traps. So a little too, it was a cool idea I think to put it in the game, but it's very abusive right now, and TA is already decent, so I think that probably needed to get removed. Timbersaw getting a pretty big buff for reactive armor level 1, 30% better. Builds up 5 stacks. That'll give him, that's just for the armor aspect. The regen will still be at 1. But let's do some very easy math on my calculator. So it's 6.5 armor instead of 5 at level 1. It's okay. 5 regen base and 6.5 armor for level 1. Level 2 will be just slightly better, 1.4 instead of 1.2. Maybe you could argue you can better get away with just like 2 points of reactive armor, although the stacks obviously goes up in a big way. As does the regen. Actually, the regen goes up a huge amount. So does the stack duration. Actually, I didn't know that the duration increased. But it'll be better at level 1, level 2. Whereas before, like even level 1 armor is like, it just doesn't feel that significant. It's nice, but it's not amazing. And Timbersaw also needs a lot of levels, is probably one reason he's not picked either. Like there's some games that he could probably work in some of the 1v1 matchups, but the hero needs a lot of levels to gain advantage. But I could see some like Whirling Death, Timber Chain abuse, perhaps. I mean, his mana pool is pretty good. If you start doing some like Whirling Deaths on 2 heroes or something, that feels not bad. You deal 100 magic damage to 2 characters on a 6-second cooldown. That's really low. And if there's trees around, 100 pure. It's kind of insane, actually, how much damage this is. Makes me feel like maybe there's some abuse potential. Like, I don't think you should play support Timbersaw or anything, but looking at the numbers as they are, there's got to be some kind of a value for something like play like a 4 position and just do something like this. And just get like reactive armor level 1 and just fight a hero. Because you'd be getting 6.5 armor, so you'd be running around with like 7 armor essentially. You'd be getting a free ring of health basically. Papa Tango, you're trading with Orb of Venom, you're dealing more damage, and then if you hit level 2, then you also have Whirling Death. Or maybe you just skip reactive armor level 1, you just go Whirling Death, because then that'd also reduce their base damage by like, it wouldn't be 15% because they already have base damage plus their primary attribute, but you'd probably reduce their damage by like 5 to 10 or something, and be dealing either pure damage or magic. You can cast this like 4 or 5 times. Looking at these numbers now, it is actually potentially very abusive against the right heroes. I think this is like another push and like, hey guys, Timbersaw is actually pretty good at doing stuff here. Not necessarily sure he's a hero you want to pick anyways, but it's bad at hitting buildings, etc. But I could see it working. Tree and Protector has been fairly popular. Kind of wish I would have played him. He's like always a hero I want to abuse and play a little bit, but I always kind of miss his come up when he gets strong. But Leech Seed is just really good for trading reasons. You just Orb of Venom, you slap people and use Leech Seed, and then if you deal damage to them, you're getting healed back for a huge amount as well. So level 1 Leech Seed does 75 damage to them, but also AoE heals you for 75. So if you're in these dual lanes trading hits, it's really good. If you get 2 points, boom, you're doing 150 damage, I think. Is that right? Is it? Oh, I'm sorry, they added a pulse, I forgot. So it does 90 damage level 1. It used to be 6, now it's 7. So that meant it did... Is it really that much? Oh, it does 105 damage actually. I was 1 short. 105 damage level 1 for 80 damage while also healing you. That's actually broken. That's so good. Was so good. Still good, but... And then it does 210 at level 2. Again, 210 heal to your hero, 210 damage to them. And previously it was for 95 mana. So he won't be able to abuse Leech Seed quite as much as he could before. But that was definitely one of the nice things about the hero. Just Leech Seed abuse, transition to a team fighter. It could work. I didn't see it often, but it was popular. In terms of the summit, I don't think there's a lot of Tree and Protector there. I'm actually seeing him 0 games. So I would argue this is a little bit weird. But it's also not weird because I was seeing his win rate going up in high level games. There's actually like no Tree and Protector games that I can find. So this is a little bit bizarre. But I do know that, at least according to the global trends, his win rate is actually pretty high. And he's being played a decent amount right now. 20% at Divine. And has a high win rate. So this kind of looks like one of those nerfs that was not based on the pro scene, that was based on some data from the actual game. So those numbers are pretty sick though. The fact that they healed equal amount as they deal is pretty insane. Pretty freaking insane. Very good skill. Probably fine for a nerf. It's really not the most significant. He's still got 300 mana. Like, he's gonna be okay, guys. Okay, Visage, Gravekeepers Cloak minimum damage reduced from 50 to 40. So Is this not a nerf? Is this a nerf? This is surely a nerf because the hero has really high win rate. So what this means is if you take more than 40 damage from a player source, your layer will kick in and you will get damage reduction for each layer that you have currently. So before, if you would take 40 damage, I think that was before reduction. I can't remember. I'd have to check. I probably don't care enough to check right now, but I think it was after. I don't think it was after reduction. I think they changed it again. It used to be like that because I remember there was like a Pudge Rot one where you could, if you got enough magic resistance, it wouldn't be able to cut through it. But basically, it's easier to break a Gravekeeper's Cloak. So it's kind of like if I attack him with an attack and I don't do enough damage, then it won't break Gravekeeper's Cloak. But when I cast a spell, that will do enough damage, therefore that will be reduced. So the fact that player-based damage can be lower now and still break his armor is generally bad, because that means like getting hit by 40 damage, he's never going to want to break armor on that, but now it will. He would love to take 40 hits and then wait until a nuke did 100 damage or something to proc in. So this is a slight nerf to the cloak. If you're focusing him or pressuring him or trying to harass him in lane, it's going to be a little bit easier to nuke through that, possibly set up for a kill. Weaver's also been popular as a carry because he's lane independent and he has some matchups that really work well. Like seems like it works really well against Windrunner. So a little bit worse for the hero. That way, after you use Sakuchi, you're a little bit slower. But generally, this is not that big of a nerf to the hero. But he was popular. Some looks like a couple drafts here and there. It's usually like as a late game pick because the hero is counterable if you pick him early. But I'm seeing some bans too, actually. Looks like second phase Weaver bans pretty commonly. Looks like almost every game, actually. I think we did see him banned at in Toronto as well, and played one game, I believe. Windrun cooldown increased from 12 to 15 at level 1. I think this kind of needed to happen. I thought Wind Ranger was still pretty good. But 15 seconds level 1 means that as a support, it's less of a, you can use Windrun whenever the hell you want, to a, you have to be a little bit more selective when you use Windrun now. So 15 seconds is a pretty big increase. It's pretty massive. It went from 25% uptime to, no, 25 to 20, right? Is that crazy? No, I feel like I'm way off. 25%. Okay, I was right. It felt more significant than that because it's 3 seconds. Percentage-wise, it feels like a low change, but this is a massive decrease for Wind Ranger. So for support Wind Ranger, this is a pretty big nerf to the hero. I don't know if they're necessarily going to get more Windrun points early game to compensate for this. Probably not that worth it. But it kind of depends what you want to do, though. If you want to get more Shackle levels. I mean, all the Wind Ranger skills are pretty value at level 1 points. But late game, it's the same skill, so it doesn't matter that much. And even like third point is not that different, really. Splinter Blast mana cost is increased. This ability was a little bit too good. It was way too, they lowered the mana cost by a lot. It used to be like 120 at level 1, dropped it to 90, and then people realized like, oh shit, this does 100 damage, and it's potentially AoE, can hit 2 heroes, and they're kind of nerfing a lot of those skills. So Nimbus is also being reduced radius-wise, so this is where the bolt can hit. I am not a big fan. Playing against Zeus's and Nimbuses are pretty good, but the fact that the radius is reduced by a bit is pretty nice, I think. It's going to be a little bit harder. It's easier for people to get out of it, and it'll be easier for ranged heroes to deal with it. If they have a range that's probably the most significant part. The radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the outside. So that means if your range is greater than 450 but less than 500, you can rejoice now. And I don't know how many heroes are there. But those heroes can better hit a Nimbus now. And you can also get out of the Nimbus faster. So overall, probably it looks kind of like a small nerf, but it's probably going to matter in some small cases or some moderate cases. So I think this is ultimately fine. I'm happy about this. What's a range creep attack range? I feel like I was wondering if a range creep would stand on the outside and kill this eventually. If there's something like that, that would be pretty significant, I guess. Maybe not, because that's kind of like a more rare thing to push creep waves with the Nimbus versus killing heroes. But anyways, so if we look over the patch, it's all pretty small. It's almost all laning stage stuff, like level 1, level 2. For the average player, most of these things don't matter very much. I mean, the meat hook nerf is probably the most pub impact one that we can look at, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, Crystal Nova's really Crystal Maiden's really popular right now, so this nerf is fairly significant too. But Mist Coil, I kind of want to try out a Abaddon Mist Coil. That sounds kind of fun to me. But yeah, small stuff leading up to TI. Lots of heroes, small hero changes, but it seems like pro players are, what's basically happening is pro players are just kind of exploring heroes and finding what heroes do a lot of damage for little cost at level 1 and level 2. And the ones that just kind of got nerfed on this previous round were AoE based heroes that could easily hit 2 heroes to value skill and value damage with their mana. So a hero like Silencer, for example, is level 1, does 16 times 6 damage. So that's a 96 damage skill, Arcane Curse, for 75 mana. It's a long cooldown though, 20 seconds. And if they cast a spell, they'll probably take another 80 damage. So that's like 176 damage for 1 skill point. Stuff like that is, I mean, Silencer's not picked. I think he's picked a little bit, but I didn't see him in this tournament at least. But that's the kind of heroes that have been getting picked more and more heavily lately, and seem to be getting the nerfs a bit. So Spec is the highest win rate in all brackets of all heroes. Yeah, he's I mean, puck pressing Haunt is pretty straightforward, you know. And once you get late game, there's not a lot of heroes that beat Spec, period, just because of he will be faster than you, he will be global, he has good team fight. If you deal damage to him, he deals damage back to you, and you can kind of itemize however the way you want to be effective. So not too surprised to see him banned. Looks like Brood is banned very consistently right now. Tinker's win rate's not even that great. Oh, Chaos Knight is a winner right now? Huh. That's interesting. Lycan's still winning too. This is the last 8 weeks though. And this is also like very low. If it's a very low pick percent, it doesn't necessarily mean a lot either. But well, CM is going to get some decrease here in usage. I think the mana cost is definitely enough where if the matchup isn't great or ideal, then CM is not going to be like a first pick hero. So I think CM is going to get pretty hard, hit pretty hard by the nerfs. I think Pudge is going to maybe stop being first pick as well, perhaps. But yeah, nice little patch.